And welcome to the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. With former Wausau West High School head football coach Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes. Coming up on the program today, we'll be talking about Week 9 of the regular season. Look ahead at the brackets in Level 1. But in between, we'll have a great set of guests. At 6:40 tonight, our coach guest for this week will be the head man at Newman Catholic High School, two-time defending WIAA 8-player football champions, making it back to the postseason. Newman Catholic football coach Paul Micklick coming up at 6:40. The Cardinals getting set for a Level 1 game at undefeated and for entertainment purposes only number 1 ranked Gilman on Friday night. And then our student athlete guest, we're going to get a pair of Marathon Red Raiders. Marathon quarterback Cooper Huxtable and wide receiver Tyler Underwood before the Raiders playoff game at Auburndale on Friday. So lots to come here in the next 2 hours on the Big High School Sports Show. Jason Foster, playoff time. Big week, huh?
Yeah, time flies. Some good games ending last season and jumping right into the playoffs. So Week 10, here we are.
Lots to talk about. Let's talk about last week's action to begin with. Obviously, the final week of the regular season, lots on the line in terms of some schools for conference championships, trying to get into the playoffs, trying to get home games in the playoffs. Valley Football Association, we were both over at Steam Stadium last Friday night, and the DC Everest Evergreens earned a big win over Wausau West, 13-7. Both teams finished 7-2 overall, 5-2 in the VFA. Logan George was 12 of 20 passing for DC Everest, 142 yards and a touchdown. Pearson McDonald, 7 catches, 80 yards and a touchdown for the Evergreens. Carter Amerson, 5 catches, 54 yards and a score for Wausau West. But as we will talk about later, it was a significant win for Everest in terms of seeding and a significant loss for Wausau West in terms of seeding. But for the game itself, for DC Everest, after a rough go of it at Tom Field a year ago, they came out and took control early, and they were able to hold on for the W. It was a good win for Everest, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a great win for Everest. I would say we've talked about it quite a bit actually. The underlying feel of that game was that Everest maybe came out with a little more energy, or maybe a lot more energy, kind of came out and kind of top to bottom, offense, defense. The other big point in this game, I would say, special teams played a huge role. 2 made field goals for Everest, some special teams miscues for the Warriors, and it really came down to a couple big plays. The 4th down touchdown catch for Everest, and both defenses played well. I would say Everest kind of had the edge as far as motivation and passion in the game. So both teams kind of have something to reflect upon and one build off of and one maybe find some answers heading into the playoffs.
Sometimes we do underestimate the ability of kicking a 27-yard field goal or a 29-yard field goal. Those were the distances for DC Everest last week. Not every team has that, and it really turns into a big factor where you don't have to go for it on a 4th down and 7 inside the 10-yard line or along those lines. Having a kicker, and Wausau West has one as well, and a number of other teams, but having a kicker, especially this time of year when the margins get a little tighter, is very important.
Yeah, and when it comes down to weather and teams who have really good defenses, which I think they both demonstrated last week, the ability to kick the ball into the end zone on every kickoff and guarantee that field position on a wet night or whatever the conditions might be also played a big role, and Everest was able to do that on every kickoff as well.
Stevens Point earns the solo conference championship. We haven't been able to see that for a few years, but Stevens Point, after losing their first game of the season, a non-conference game against Mukwanago, runs the table after that win over Hudson, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when we talk about seedings a little bit later on, but then 7-0 in the VFA, and they completed their perfect conference season with a 56-6 win over Appleton West. Braylon Smola, 18 rushes, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns for the Panthers. Izzy Moore, 12 rushes, 92 yards, and a touchdown for Stevens Point. And there's something, I think, perfectly, I don't know what the word would be, not ironic, but it's good for Stevens Point because a year ago they had a chance to get into the playoffs but lost at Appleton West to end a very disappointing season. This time around they finished it off against Appleton West to earn a conference championship.
Yeah, we had Coach on earlier in the year, and after a big win against Hudson, and we kind of at that point started talking about what an improved program they looked like offensively, defensively, the way he talked about the growth that they've had from his first year to the second year. And I think we'd be remiss to not say, I mean, you're giving out awards. This is by far the most improved team in this conference, and congratulations to them. I mean, talk about a great turnaround and establishing themselves as kind of the leader in the VFA right now.
Wisconsin Rapids knocks off Wausau East last week, 33-14. So the Red Raiders get a couple of wins to wrap up their campaign, 2-7. 2-5 in the conference. East 2-7, 1-6 in the league. Cohen Lehman had 23 rushes, 211 yards for Rapids. Caden Worth, an 80-yard interception return for a touchdown for East. That play was the last play of the third quarter, and actually got them to within 21-14 after a 21-0 halftime lead for Rapids. But then Rapids scored a couple of times in the fourth quarter to pull away. Brady Prohoda, Elmer Hurd each had 13 tackles for East. Obviously, Tony Biolo's been around long enough where you're not going to say anything about a 2-7 record being anything other than disappointing, but at the same time they were very close, and then they were able to finish the year off in a good way. They were able to finish off with a couple of W's to go into the off season and try to build from there. And likewise for East, again, you're not going to say 2-7 is an ultra successful season, but coming back after missing a couple of 11-man varsity seasons, able to get through the season, be able to be competitive throughout the season, get a couple of wins. Again, you can't say 2-7 for either side is something to throw a parade over, but at the same time, you can definitely take some areas to build on going into 2024.
Yeah, I can, after coaching football for a long time, and I certainly can't speak to what it's like to win a state championship, but I can certainly speak to what it's like to have a 2-7 season, and sometimes 2-7 is a horrible season. And obviously everyone's goal is to make the playoffs and win games and have deep runs and all that. But at the end of the year, you can look at a 2-7 season and find a lot of value and a lot of things to build off of. And I think that's the type of 2-7 season it was. They were minutes and a few plays away from being a 4-win conference team and a 4-win playoff team. I mean, you look at the difference between them and Marshfield, at the pretty razor thin. And on the other side, Wausau East, when you looked at where they've been the last few years, we talked about it earlier in the year, and you were hoping they'd have success in their non-conference games, but to come and win a conference game and to end the year actually not just playing, but competing in games like this, I think they've got to feel really good about how their season went, what their 3-year journey has been, and where they're going to be to start next season.
And it's going to be interesting next year for Wausau East going into the Great Northern Conference. There is an opportunity in their final year before the merger to actually try and do something impressive. You look at it, one of their wins this season came against Lakeland. Yeah. And Lakeland, of course, is a 5-4 team going to the postseason playoffs. They won 5 games in conference this season. So, again, you lose a few impact players for East, but at the same time, I imagine going into the offseason, coach can go, hey, we got an opportunity next year to do something a little bit special to try and get to the postseason and make something happen in this conference.
Yeah, I think the other thing would be remiss not to mention Caden Worth.
Yeah.
Obviously, sometimes it's hard to look at the stats of a team like this, because I like a lot of stats come in the second half of games when maybe the other team had maybe not their starters in, but every single week, Caden Worth has shown up, whether it's special teams, a big play on offense or defense. He had a really nice season and should be recognized for that. And I think he was from an all-conference standpoint.
Not many players can score offensively, defensively, and special teams, and he did that, because we know that he scored on special teams because we saw it in the law game. So obviously, and he scored a defensive touchdown last week against Rapids. And finally, a game that was a bit of a surprise was Marshfield defeated Hortonville 17-7. Marshfield 4-5, 4-3 in the conference. Hortonville 5-4, 4-3 in the conference. 48-yard interception return for a touchdown by Caleb Neuenfeld broke a 7-7 tie in the third quarter. Marshfield picked off 5 passes and forced 7 turnovers. 262 to 168 edge and yards, and I put down Marshfield. That was actually Hortonville had the edge and yards. But for Marshfield, again, we've seen it. You turn it over, a touchdown's worth of times, it's going to be hard to win. And Hortonville, despite their really good defense, who kept them in the game, Marshfield struggled. I mean, I think only had 2 completed passes the entire night. But when your defense does all the heavy lifting, you get a big win. And for Marshfield, it was a significant win going into the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's huge for them. And they go on to, we'll talk about the matchups later, but they go on to play a New Richmond team that they competed with in week 2. I think think not only was this a huge win and boost for them going in, probably thought they'd make the playoffs at 3-4 conference record as opposed to 4-3. And then Hortonville's got to look at this one as the one that got away.
Right.
Like, this should have definitely been a win. This would have put them at 5-2, right up there with West and Everest, and kind of springboard you into their new conference next year. But tough loss for them.
And that, I think, again, we'll talk later about the exact seedings and matchups, but 2 weeks ago, I think Hortonville was thinking pretty high seed in a home game in level 1. Now they're a 6th seed going into the playoffs. It shows, again, the last 2 games of the season where they were battling for a conference championship after that big win at Everest a couple of weeks ago. And then all of a sudden, Everest and Hortonville going into that game were tied. In the end, Everest finished a game ahead of Hortonville despite losing to Hortonville.
And I think you take those steps back and you look at how close the Rapids and Marshfield game was, and then you look at the fact that Marshfield beat Hortonville, and then how close we thought Hortonville, West, and Everest were. And I think it just speaks to the fact that Spash was the class. The next 4 were all kind of sitting there together, and then the 2 who are building their programs back up.
Great Northern Conference. Mosinee finishes a perfect Great Northern Conference season, 7-0, 8-1 overall. Gave up just 3 points all season long in the GNC. Mosinee beat Merrill 49-0. Merrill ends a tough 0-9 season. Gavin Obremski, 9-15, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 rushes, 59 yards, and a score. Callum Wheeler, 15 rushes, 36 yards for Merrill. And the Mosinee D just gave up 82 total yards. So, again, we always talk about Obremski and Jershely and some of the offensive performers for Mosinee. It's going to be very interesting when they face some teams outside the GNC in this playoff run to see how good that defense really is.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, that's where their success will or won't lie. I think that nothing against the GNC, but I would think everyone in that conference could probably agree it was a down year in the GNC. So other than the Stratford game early, and Medford was a good game, they didn't see a lot from other teams defensively, and I think Medford did show that they can slow that offense down, so their defense can play a big role in the playoffs.
Medford rolls Antigo 58-14, so Medford 7-2 overall, 6-1 in the conference. Red Robins do get into the postseason, 4-5 overall, 3-4 in the conference. Paxton Rothmeyer, 16 rushes, 211 yards and a touchdown, 408 rushing yards on 38 attempts for Medford. Alec Napkavich, 10 rushes, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns for Antigo. But Medford, again, I think you hit it on the head. I think we have to be open about it, that the Great Northern Conference for the last number of years, Mosinee and Medford, it's been those two and then everybody else. I think Lakeland a little bit below them, and then everybody else. Again, it's always interesting to see. And this year, Medford, I believe, does have a conference opponent in their first round game, but this year it's not been put into sort of a mini tournament. We're going to get a chance to see some of these schools go up against the others, and I think Medford is one of those examples to show how good they are, because it's really, again, I think a little difficult to tell exactly how good they are.
Yeah, I think their trademark is still playing good defense and being able to run the ball, and while they're pretty good at those things this year, most certainly not at the level they've been in the past. So I think they get Hayward week 1, so that should be a good rematch from a winning standpoint
Right
for them.
Yeah. Lakeland, again, they finished off with 5 wins in a row for the second straight year after starting 0-4, and they are 5-2 in the conference, beating Rhinelander, a team that started off so well, but really was leaking oil coming down the stretch. Lakeland 32, Rhinelander 6. Noah Bruckner, 18 rushes, 105 yards, and 3 touchdowns for Lakeland. James Heck, 16 rushes, 53 yards for Rhinelander. And real quickly, Hayward did get that win they needed, 5-4, 3-4 in the conference, beating Ashland 26-6. So you look at those 3 schools that are going to the playoffs: Lakeland, Rhinelander, and Hayward. Lakeland has to, again, feel good. I think Lakeland feels good. They're not playing Medford this year like they did last year in the first round of the playoffs. Rhinelander, again, they were able to find a way in Merrill a week ago just to get to the playoffs. They're struggling right now to put up any kind of offense. And then Hayward has the tough test of seeing the full in Medford. But those 3 teams all do make the playoffs.
And I think one of the things with the computer seeding as opposed to the old in-person thing is one of the things they take into consideration in their algorithm or formula, whatever you want to call it, is your strength of schedule and your conference. And the Great Northern being down this year and the teams getting in just by beating the bottom teams in that conference, I think obviously shows up at the seeding as well.
We're going to take a quick timeout, come back, talk about the other action in week number 9. Then we'll have our guest, and then we'll come back and really break down the brackets for Level 1 playoffs coming up later in the program. So more to come here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And again, don't forget, if you miss the show, it will be posted on our website, bullfallsradio.com. Click on sports, click on the Big High School Sports Show, or you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. So coming up again in just a few minutes, a little bit later on to this hour, Paul Micklig, the Newman Catholic High School head football coach. And then in hour number 2 of the show, from the Marathon High School Red Raiders, getting set for a Division 6 Level 1 game at Auburndale on Friday. Cooper Huxtama and Tyler Underwood coming up just after 7 o'clock. Again, with Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes, and going into the Marewood. And we won't be talking a whole bunch about the game last Friday with our Marathon guest because it was a rough one against the Edgar Wildcats. Tough field conditions over in Marathon on Friday night, and Edgar was able to win 44-0. Edgar 7-0 in the conference, win the conference championship, 8-1 overall. Marathon does earn that playoff berth already. 4-5 overall, 3-4 in the conference. Carter Butt, 19 rushes, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns for Edgar. Colby Weisenberger, 8 rushes, 67 yards, and a touchdown. And again, as we go into the postseason playoffs, Edgar, a number 2 seed, but boy, they're playing a lot like a number 1 seed from what we've seen, aren't they?
Yeah, I think the computer's got some questions to answer in that one. I think correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't give up a touchdown in conference play and only gave up 6 points the whole season, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty remarkable. And when we look at some of these other teams that are banged up a little bit and kind of getting through, wish they had some guys who play, but I mean, a Carter Butt probably didn't play a lot in that game. I mean, 19 rushes, maybe a little more than usual for him, but he should be healthy and at full steam. That's going to be a tough road for anybody in Edgar's path.
And we'll talk more about Marathon with our player guest coming up a little bit later on. Auburndale with a bit of an upset. For the second straight year, they knock off Colby in week number 9. Auburndale 27, Colby 13. It was a big fourth quarter for Auburndale, who finishes 8-1 overall, 6-1 in the conference, 7-2 for Colby, 5-2 in the league. Colby had a 13-12 lead going into the fourth, but 15-0 Auburndale in the final 12 minutes. Caden Anderson, 8 of 15 passing, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns, added 8 rushes for 59 yards and 2 scores. Gavin Voss, a big night for Colby, 29 rushes, 186 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But coming off a real rough game against Edgar the week before, that's a good win for Auburndale to launch into the postseason.
Yeah, I think for both of these teams, that whole conference, I mean, when you look at where they're all seated and what it represents, all 3 of these teams should be fun to follow moving forward. And Colby's got to be scratching their head a little bit as far as what they got to do in week 9 to get over the hump with Auburndale.
And obviously the computers like that one because Auburndale got a 1 and Stratford got a number 2, which we'll talk about a little bit later on.
Yikes.
Again, one of the questionable, I think, seeding decisions from the old computer, but that's for later in the program. And also last Thursday was Abbotsford eliminating Pittsville from playoff contention. Abbey defeated Pittsville 35-22. Abbotsford, a solid regular season, 6-3 overall, 4-3 in the conference. Pittsville, who started off so well, kind of faded down the stretch against the good competition. 4-5 overall, 2-5 in the conference. JV Castillo, a monster night for Abbey, 16 rushes, 239 yards and 4 touchdowns. Christian Fuentes, 19 rushes, 105 yards and a score for Abbotsford. Dawson Luther, 19 rushes, 98 yards and 2 touchdowns for Pittsville. But when Abbotsford wins, you usually see multiple 100-plus yard rushers.
Yeah, I was excited to see our guys Castillo and Fuentes back in there as both being over 100 yards. And it's got to be a really good feeling. They got a nice seed in the playoffs as well. So they're kind of poised if they can keep that run game going and play some good defense to win some games.
CWC Large, Stratford is the conference champions. Tigers 8-1 overall, 7-0 in the conference. Rolling past Spencer Columbus, 54-14. Spencer Columbus needed the big upset to earn a playoff spot. They come up short, 2-7 overall, 2-5 in the conference. Calder Kilty, a gaudy 20 yards per carry, 8 rushes, 160 yards and 2 scores. Jack Tubbs did not pass much, but got plenty of production. 4 of 4 for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns for Stratford. Another team that looks to be peaking at the right time.
Yeah, I think another one that will come in well rested and healthy. They played the meat of their schedule early in the year and have kind of had quite a few blowouts down the stretch, so they should be a force to be reckoned with.
Also, Wittenberg-Burnhamwood finishes 8-1 overall, 6-1 in the conference as they roll past Weyauwega-Fremont 50-6. Weyauwega-Fremont started 6-0, but they have taken it on the chin 3 weeks in a row against Amherst, Stratford, and Whitburn. 6-3 overall, 4-3 in the conference. Marshall Fraser, 4 rushes, 146 yards and 3 touchdowns. Whitburn had 25 attempts for 330 yards. Dawson Lynn, 13 rushes, 98 yards and a touchdown for Weyauwega. But Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, I mean, they are a team that played very competitively at Stratford for their only loss, have been pretty dominant in a lot of their other games, and in a good spot going into the postseason. And Weyauwega-Fremont, and they got Stratford coming up as well. So
yeah, I think Wittenberg is one of the teams that we look at that might be the complete package in that they competed that tough part of their schedule, won the big ones, even competed in the toughest game they had on their schedule. And then what do they have? They have a great line on both sides of the ball, a quarterback who can run and pass, and their ability to also run the ball very efficient. from their quarterback as well. So that'll be fun to watch them in the postseason.
Well, Whitburn, if they do the job in level 1, they could be facing Amherst in level 2, and Amherst finishes off their regular season well with a 28-12 win over Manawa. Amherst 6-3 overall, 5-2 in the conference. Manawa 2-7, 1-6. Nassau Holland had 24 rushes, 107 yards, and a touchdown for Amherst. So Amherst, again, they had a little struggle, early on in the campaign, but they finished well, and they actually earned themselves a fairly decent seed as well.
Yeah, I think history helps them out. They have a great coach, great coaching staff, and the tradition of what it takes to win in the playoffs. So that's going to be if they both take care of business, that's going to be a great week or level 2 matchup.
And Nakusa beat Shiocton in a game between teams that were not going to the postseason. Nakusa 38, Shiocton 8, 3-6 for the Papermakers, 2-5 in the conference. Shiocton, who made it to the state championship game in D7 a year ago, finishes up at 1-8 this year, 1-6 in the conference. Nash Quickmar had 9 rushes, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 4 of 5 passing, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns for Nakusa. Let's go right into the CWC Small. Loyal finishes off the season playing really good football. They had struggled early, but they finished off with 3 straight wins, and they beat Pacelli last Thursday, 64-13. So Loyal, 3-6 overall, 4-3 in the conference because of the oddities of forfeits. Pacelli 2-7, 2-5 in the CWC Small. Bryce Flaker had 15 rushes, 92 yards for Pacelli, but boy, Loyal. I'll say one thing for the way the things are these days, that you can get off to a tough start and still have time to turn it around.
Yeah, I think those crossover games, certainly, I think that must be a mindset as those guys enter their season, is kind of a little bit of your scrimmage mentality for those CWC small schools coming in. You want to come in, you want to get better in certain areas. You look for the small victories, and you come out healthy, so you're ready to roll when you get to your true conference season. I think Loyal was able to do that this year.
Assumption gets their 3rd conference win. Thought maybe that would be enough, but they were one of the 3 and 4 teams that did not make the postseason playoffs. Assumption got past Rosholt 34-26. Assumption 3-6 overall, 3-4 in the conference. Rosholt 0-9 on the season. Manny Schultz 17 rushes, 164 yards, and 3 touchdowns for Wisconsin Rapids Assumption. Again, strength of conference, strength of schedule, and that's ultimately left out Assumption as one of the 3 and 4 teams not to make the postseason.
Yeah, and if I'm the head coach of Assumption, I'm probably not too upset about that. I don't know what week 10 would have looked like for them, but it probably wouldn't have been great. And you end your season on a win, you can kind of collect the equipment and talk about that, and kind of the springboard into your off season.
And Iola Scandinavia, the conference champions, finished 6-3 overall, 5-2 in the conference. They got the forfeit in conference, so they found Kingdom Prep Lutheran and beat them 42-0. Carrillo Capizia, 17 rushes, 164 yards, 4 touchdowns for IS. And again, Iola Scandinavia is a program, and Coach Erickson has done it in the past. They made deep runs, and again, after the crossover games, they put their foot on the accelerator and played some good football.
Yeah, and they're, again, very similar to Amherst, and they know how to win in the postseason. They know the keys or the recipe to their success, and they're gearing up and ready to go.
In 8-player football, Central Conference, a game that we had last Thursday night here on Bull Falls Radio, Newman Catholic got the win they needed, 22-18 over Tri-County. Cardinals 5-3 overall, 4-1 in the conference. Tri-County 1-6. Tyler Ackerman, playing through a bit of a bum ankle, left the game for a few plays, but came back and had 25 rushes, 159 yards on the ground, 10 of 21 passing, 107 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. And it was a night where the Cards lost a number of players. I mean, again, you don't have many players to deal with, and they were able to battle, and their defense really did the job in the second half.
Yeah, nice win, and they kind of knew going in that they needed that win to have any chance. So to kind of gut it out, close game with Tri-County, deal with the adversity of injuries. And then kind of, too, you reflect back on this season. Obviously, they're not done yet. We'll talk to Coach about that and looking at a postseason run here. But all in all, I think that they can have a lot of pride in what got them to this point already. The fact that the way things kind of started, not just 2 losses, but 2 real tough losses, and being able to come back and have a playoffs and see what they can do and how they compete on the tail end of their season.
Wild Rose edges Port Edwards in a thriller, 34-33. Any hopes that Port had of getting to the postseason ended with that 1-point loss. They're 4-4. And Wild Rose finishes 4-4 as well. Hayden Hewitt, 14 of 21, 223 yards, 3 touchdowns. Brendan Beck, 16 rushes, 116 yards, touchdown for Port. And also Alman Bancroft, the conference champions in the Central. They finished perfect in the conference, 7-1 overall. They roll past Marion Tigerton 50-6. TJ Lamb, 10 of 11 passing, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception for Alman Bancroft. And the CWC East, Gilman, as we'll talk more about Gilman with Coach Paul Micklig of the Newman Cardinals a little bit later on. They rolled past Athens 60-6. Gilman 8-0. 5-0 in the conference. Athens 4-4, 2-3 in the conference. Troy Duhlman had 10 rushes, 107 yards, and a touchdown for Gilman. Held Athens to just 126 total yards. The game that was really intriguing between two good programs and two good teams. Thorpe able to rally past Owen Withy, 24-22. Thorpe 6-2 overall, 4-1 in the conference. Owen Withy 5-3 overall, 3-2 in the conference. Logan Hansen, big back for Thorpe, 28 rushes, 215 yards, and a touchdown. Colin Dahlman had 20 rushes, 133 yards, and a touchdown for Owen Withy, who led 22-12 heading to the fourth quarter, but outscored 12-0. And with that, these teams will face off again coming up on Friday night. It should be a good one. And then finally, Alma Center Lincoln beat Greenwood 46-0. So again, we will talk more about the 8-player brackets coming up and the 11-player brackets coming up, but we're going to take a quick break, come back, have our first guest, Newman Catholic head football coach Paul Micklig, coming up next, and then after 7 o'clock, our student-athlete guest from Marathon, Cooper Huxaba and Tyler Underwood. So we'll take a break, come back with Coach Micklig coming up next here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Right now it's time for our coach guest for this week from the Newman Catholic High School Cardinals. Heading into the postseason yet again. We're joined by Paul Mickling. Coach, thanks for coming on over.
Thanks, Chad. And you know, I got to start out with, and I haven't said this to you yet, but usually, and I've never asked, you know, when to come on and things like that. But the last couple of years, you had me on after the state championship game. So what are you saying? What are you saying to all of you listeners out there? What are you saying, Chad?
I need a drink.
Is that what
I'm starting to feel a little warm.
You didn't think I was going to come up here and be easy on you, did you? That's not what's going to happen.
Thanks for coming on.
It's awesome to be here, and you guys do a great job.
I'm going to slide right past that.
Yeah.
No.
I don't blame you.
No, actually, I mean, it has been, and I know that you, like I, enjoy watching Rocky movies. Whenever there's a Rocky marathon on the weekend, I tend to see it, and I know that you tend to see it as well. And I thought last Thursday night was a bit of a Rocky kind of night because your guys were kind of, you know, going down. It was, you know, you don't have a lot of kids on the team, about 20 kids, and you have some injury issues, and you're able to battle through the elements and be able to find a way at the end. And I know that you were thrilled with the win last week in order to get to your 5th win of the season. That was sort of the 15th round in a sense of what began back in the summer and even back in the off season. It was a special night to get that win at Tri-County last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, especially since, I mean, now you look at it that we needed that win to get in the playoffs, and that got us in, and we didn't know that until, you know, Saturday morning, really. I mean, we kind of had a feeling on Friday night after doing the numbers and stuff like that, but, you know, if we don't win that game, we don't get the playoffs, and that's pretty much how it goes. And I don't think we've been in that situation, 11-man or 8-man, for a while. I think it was back like in 2000. One of the first times we went to the playoffs, actually, in the WIA playoffs. We had to be Assumption to get in. And I know you remember that game. So it's been, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years since we had that kind of game on there. And we didn't even know the situation because we didn't know, you know, if we were going to be able to get in, even with the win. But it was a game that, you know, one of the best games that, and when I say the best games, it wasn't well played, but it was one of the best games that I saw, that facing adversity and looking at those kids at halftime, and I didn't think, I was worried if we were going to be able to finish the game, so to speak, and they finished it tremendously, and that's something that I will always remember, and it'll be special for this group and for me with them.
So kind of piggybacking off of that, like generally speaking, things have come pretty easy. I mean, go back to pre-COVID, and they haven't come easy because you've been on easy street. You've worked really hard. You've had a great run of athletes. You're incredible high school football coach, as evidenced by your record. But this is not only like to get in the playoffs, but to win these close games. Injuries, like it's been great watching Tyler throughout the year. He did a great job when he was on the show, but kind of some ups and downs as a first-year starter at tackle turned quarterback. So like from a coaching standpoint, that's a lot different, like week to week going into that. What goes into it, and how rewarding is it to win those on the backside?
That is, and I was listening. One of the best coaches in high school football passed away this weekend, and I was looking at one of his videos he had, and he said that good teams lose early, and then they might lose their last game, and that's where you look at it. And we lost our first 2, and you know, hopefully we don't lose our last game, but you know, there's a chance that will happen. That means that we have gotten better, like you're saying, and how the whole time as a coach, you're looking at it differently, and you're like, okay, this is a different group. What do we want to do, and what do we want to? How is this going to lay out? Because you know, Coach, that you're looking at the season, you know how it's going to lay out before it even happens, for the most part. I'm not saying there's not going to be some wrinkles in there, some good things, bad things, but for the most part, you know what you have to do and who you got to beat and how you got to beat them, and the game plan before the season even starts. And I think that it was an example today in practice, and I think Chad was even there when he did it, is we had to put somebody else at center this week, obviously, because we lost our center last week. And, I yelled something out, and they actually did it on the fly. And I'll be honest with you, 3 weeks ago, we would have ran into each other, probably went the wrong way. And that's the fact of life. And it was a moment where I was like, we're getting better with this young team. We're a young team, and we're getting better. And we're not just playing for today. We're playing for Friday night, obviously, and we're playing for hopefully the next week, and we're playing for the next year, and we're playing for the off season. We're playing for everything we're doing. We're trying to get better, and as long as we're getting better, we're doing the right things as a coach.
And I don't think the average listener out there, the people who spend most of their non-WIAA lives playing club and different sports, and nothing against that, but I don't think people quite understand what goes into winning any sport, especially as a game like football, whatever it is. Like, there's a lot that has to time and energy that goes into preparing for it. So every win is huge, but I don't think also the average person understands that in a 5-4 season, you probably coached and worked twice as hard as you did in a 9-0 or an 8-0 regular season.
Yep.
Like, how much effort goes into that. So, I mean, just what a huge accomplishment that is to win the games you won this year, how you won them, as opposed to when we're blessed with really good athletes and things really line up for us.
And Coach, with this too, is that last week, for example, there's a difference between getting ready for a week after injuries, and there's a huge difference when those injuries happen in that game and early on. You come in there with a game plan, and it goes out the window. And to adjust in that first quarter, and you're playing 3 quarters with stuff that you and people will be like, well, didn't you prepare them? Well, I'm going to tell you this right now. We only got so much time in a week, and they're student athletes, not athletes, and so. That is and you can ask, you've been through it. I'm sure you've been through it. And those are the most difficult ones. And when you come out on top, it's special.
Yes.
Again, we're talking to Paul Miklik, the Newman Catholic High School head football coach, here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio. The process, and you've talked about that. Where did your team get better in the big areas that have helped you get to the postseason playoffs, to be able to replace all your starters? And again, I think people don't realize that you lost everybody in terms of where you looked at your depth chart last season. The quarterback, the lineman, everybody. You had one guy who changed, but everybody else is brand new. Where did you get better during the course of the season as you watched your team? What were the biggest reasons?
I think they have learned. Offensively, they have learned the calls and the little things, the little changes, the subtle changes, how to block, how to get to those angles a little bit. Our line play has gotten tremendously better from the first game to now. And I don't care if you're playing 8-man, 11-man, Pop Warner, whatever. If you can't block, and it's tackle football, you're going to have problems. We got better up front as the season's gone on offensively. And I'll be honest with you, when I'm looking at the whole big picture, I didn't think that we were going to lose our running back, the kid that has speed for us, that can really break them, and just a tremendous kid overall, that we were going to lose our running back in week 1 just after halftime. So so we were adjusting again after the first week about how we're going to run the ball, how we're going to make sure that we have people in position to make plays. And then defensively, there's a lot that Coach Thorpe and we do on our Sunday night thing to make it easier for these guys during the week. We're trying to make it easier because, again, they're student athletes and they got other things going on. But I think how they have taken the scouting report and how they have gotten those little things and how to learn to play high school varsity football has been the biggest change than anything. Because when you're sitting in the back room and you're on a Monday night when we're watching film and you're not worried about playing on Friday, you don't take it quite as seriously as you probably should. And then suddenly now, I'm in the game. So how do I do this? How do I adjust? So I think those are the biggest factors that I see. Obviously, they're going to get better on the field, catching the ball. I mean, today we went through our passing progression, and it was the best one we've had. I mean, we only had 4 drops, probably out of about 200 throws, about 200 throws, and we're catching the ball better. We're doing all those things better. And again, you keep doing those things. And it starts in camps and things like that during the summer that these guys go to, that they're giving up their time. That's what another thing they don't understand. And it's team oriented. I mean, the Central Wisconsin camp that is put on is tremendous. I love seeing those guys. I love seeing East. I love seeing Everest. I mean, those guys are. And it starts with that, and going to 7-on-7s and playing against those same teams, and we're little old Newman, and we come in there against Point the first week, and one of the bigger schools in the state, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is going to be ugly, and our kids competed, and it was the first time they ever did that. So they've been growing since day one, and when I say day one is June 1st. Since then.
And going into a season like this, isn't that kind of it? Like, first you have to figure out how to compete, not win. You got to figure out how to compete. And you kind of gave some great examples there of individual skill improvement and schematic and football intelligence. Where have you seen growth from, like, the individual players, not skills, but kind of in that mental part of the game and the leadership and the teammate type stuff? Have you seen a lot of gains in those areas as well?
Yeah, and it's funny because we were just talking about it last night, and Coach Ackerman's on staff with me and Tyler's dad, and we were just talking about all conference things and that kind of stuff, and that stuff doesn't matter. The biggest thing that I seen since Tyler from day one until today, I'm just using him as an example. There's a lot of them, but is his leadership of how he does and handles it, and handles where guys are going and where they're supposed to be lined up, and those kinds of things, and keeping them together when the chips are down. And that's what I'm most proud of those accomplishments. And I can say with the linemen, same thing. They're talking more than, as a lineman. I mean, they have to communicate. They have to communicate, and they're communicating better, and they're celebrating when they have success and somebody else's success, not their own success, somebody else's success. And that's part of the process of learning and building that group together and a program together, that it's not about me, it's about we. And I think that those are just a little examples of what has developed this year.
One of the things that the mental aspect is that it's a whole new group, and yet you had those, like the win streak when you lost the first game. These guys, it wasn't them that lost the win streak, but yet they were able to handle those first 2 games exceptionally well, and then win 4 of the last 5, or 5 of the last 6 in order to get to the postseason. The mental aspect, I think, is underestimated. They handled themselves pretty well to kind of get out of that hole, didn't they?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you to remind me of that we had a winning streak and it's not there anymore, because I forgot about that.
Oh, geez.
I literally forgot about it.
I'm glad.
What I'm saying is we forgot that.
Right. But they handled themselves extremely well.
Because I don't remember that. And it doesn't. That's for somebody else and some other day. They came and got back to work and came and wanted to improve individually and as a team the following week. That wasn't what. I hope we're not playing for wins and losses. I know that they keep a score, but you said it best, that it's about competing. Mm-hmm. And I thought last Thursday night was an example of, there was 2 or 3 times our guys went out, and I'm thinking to myself, oh boy. And you know what? They went back in the game. And I'm not saying that you're a hero if you're hurt, that you're coming back in the game. But there's something about competing, and that's what we're starting to do, is we're learning how to compete. And I tell you that right now, they believe that if they play good football, that they can beat anybody. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the first step in the process of growth, of actually doing that. And so I'm really excited and proud of that. And I told them, that was the last thing I told them at practice today.
And the skills they learn through a season like this and that process are great for winning football games, but it's really what high school sports is about. It's going to help them be better students and better husbands and fathers and employees and bosses. And I think that's my favorite part about watching that growth, is how these kids are able to put it together to win football games and be good teammates and that sort of thing, but also the skills they're gaining that are going to stay with them the rest of their lives.
How can you duplicate that because because I truly believe that it's a classroom. But how can you duplicate what they had to go through last Thursday night? There's no other better way than actually doing it that way to carry along for the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
What about the challenge this week of Gilman? It's becoming an annual get-together here in the postseason because it means that you're facing a pretty good program. Of course, you got a great program as well. Gilman's done a great job so far this season. What's your take on the matchup on Friday?
Tremendously coached. I have all the respect. We played Coach Rosemeyer a lot in 11-man, and when they won the state title,
9 times.
9 times we played them in 11-man.
Yeah, I looked it up.
Don't tell me the record on that, please.
It was very close. Very close.
Was it close?
And right now with the 2 wins, you're actually ahead. Last 2 years.
Well,
I like to give you good news once in a while. Too.
Well, that's good. And to be honest with you, I don't even look at that.
I know
I'm worried about this group and Friday night.
But but media guys, we're trouble.
Yeah. You guys are always causing trouble.
Yeah.
But they're tremendously coached. Their defense coordinator, he coached some of our kids the last couple of years in the All-Star game, and had many conversations with him about that. Their program, I mean, to think about, they had like 96 kids, I think, in their school, 95, and they have 32 of them out for football. I mean, it's a football town. You go up in there into their trophy case. They've won 11-man state championships. They've won everything out. They love their football, and that most of that time was with these 2 gentlemen as coaches. They're well schooled, disciplined, and they're not going to make mistakes. We're going to have to make sure that we're ready to play a really good football game. I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect football game, but we can't make a mistake because they will jump on it and they will turn it into a score very quickly.
We got about 90 seconds to go. Anything else you want to ask the coach?
No, I think real quick to kind of speak to, we've mentioned it several times earlier on the show tonight, the Amhersts of the world, the Colbys of the world, Edgar, Stratford. Newman is in that same category. So while you don't have the players who won those state championships, you do have the history and tradition of being in these situations. How does that impact how you guys prepare this week?
They've seen it before. Like you said, they've seen it, how they were doing it. And I think it does help. They got confidence. They have some confidence that they can beat anybody at any given day. And Gilman's a great team. They're number 1 ranked for a reason because they're really good. They were number 1 ranked 2 years ago too. So we're not going to forget that. And we're going to go up there and give them everything we have.
Rankings are for entertainment purposes only. You bringing up rankings? Yes. Come on.
Nepotism and rankings. Just ask Chad about that. You'll be on there all night.
Good thing we have a hard break because otherwise I would go right into it. Newman and Gilman, you can hear the game live, bullfallsradio.com, Sports Stream 3 on the Civic Media app. And go to my social. I have a direct link, making it so easy for people. Just click on the link and you'll be able to catch the game live on Friday night. And best of luck, Coach. We'll get you back after the state championship game.
I'd be really happy with that.
We got to take a time out. We got a news update. Then we'll come back and have our student athlete guests for this week, Cooper Huxama and Tyler Underwood from Marathon High School. That's And welcome back. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Hour number 2 of the program, along with former Wausau West head football coach Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes. And we start off the second hour each week with our student athlete guest. And this week, not 1 but 2 for Marathon High School, getting set for a Level 1 playoff at Auburndale on Friday night. We're joined by Cooper Huxama and Tyler Underwood. And gentlemen, thank you both for coming on in tonight.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And again, it's always an exciting week, start of the postseason playoffs. And for Marathon football, it's a return to the playoffs. And we'll ask both of you, first of all, what's it mean to be back? Because last season you had, I think, a similar kind of run and weren't able to finish it off and get to the postseason. This year, able to get back to the playoffs. What does it mean to be playing here in week number 10?
I mean, we've had a pretty long drought, I'd say, for what we were before. A lot of people didn't expect a lot from us, so to get there after little to no expectations is pretty cool. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of going off what Cooper said, I feel like our season has been defined by exceeding expectations that other people have for us. Like, going into this year, like, a lot of people would talk to me and be like, oh, good luck this year, and they'd be kind of sarcastic about it. But, we've really taken what we've gotten this season and ran with it, I feel like.
Real quickly, Jason, before I jump in, that's one of the things I think that's about, when you're trying to build something, that sometimes it can be hard within the halls of the school to try to get that optimism going. And I imagine that you almost took that as a challenge, Tyler, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we use that as motivation every week to keep getting better and go out there and prove people wrong.
And I think in what's great about football, and we've talked a little bit off air about your other sports, and we'll talk more about that moving forward. But the great thing about football is it's the only sport left where you have to qualify for the playoffs. Otherwise, everybody makes it. So when you talk about a season, an off season, preparing for it, making the playoffs is a big deal. I mean, that's half the teams don't make the playoffs. So it's a great thing that you guys have accomplished this year. What do you think it means for your program? Like, obviously you're going to compete and have a great matchup week 1 against Auburndale, and you guys will hand it off to the next group as seniors. But what does that mean for the program that you guys brought it back to the playoffs?
Well, I'm really hoping, Cooper and I, we only have one more year left, but I'm really hoping our program can build off of this in the future and just keep setting higher and higher goals as the years go on and just, keep getting better.
And when you look at, your schedule is a meat grinder, right? Like, you guys have some really good teams. So when you look at an off season and then you kind of look at your schedule, there's definitely games that you probably look at as great rivalry matchups and traditional matchups, and then certain games in order to get those wins to make the playoffs that you have to win. Did it kind of play out that way? Did you kind of win the games you thought you were going to, or were there any surprises along the way?
I think for the most part we won what we thought we would, and we competed where we thought we should have won. Playing in the Marewood is really tough. We've got a lot of good teams, so having that and playing in the conference is, you got to make the most of what you can when you can.
And knowing that you had Edgar week 9, you kind of had to make sure always will compete and go to beat them, but the team they have this year looks to be really tough, so you kind of had to make sure you took care of business before you got to week 9 this year, and you did that.
Let's talk about the leadership aspects. Cooper, being the quarterback, and obviously you've had a little experience at the quarterback position. When you go through tough times, and I imagine some of the toughest times this season may have been maybe the Abbotsford and Auburndale games the first time around, because you had the chance against Abbotsford, had the lead, let that one slip away, and then again you put up more than 400 yards against Auburndale but not able to win. When you're as a quarterback, how do you look at the leadership aspect of your position?
It's not just me. Like, everybody knows, like, it's on us. It's not like we have to, like, coach ourselves. It's not all, like, on the coaches. We all know, like, what we have to do, and, like, getting that Abbotsford game, having that lead at half, and then kind of going dormant in the second half almost. Like, we knew we could have done better and where we could have done better, but we've got losing from last year, losing Matt and Drew, who are two probably biggest leaders of the team, that made, like, everybody step up, not just me, but, like, Ty and Peyton and Luke and all of our seniors and some of our underclassmen. Everybody had to step up.
And in losses like that, like ones you felt you were there and could have had it and could have won, like, tough loss on that night, but a lot to be learned there. What did you guys take away from that and when you move forward from that Abbotsford game? What areas did you improve on because of that night?
I think something that we've improved on tremendously from the beginning of the season is, like, our physicality and how we play defensively. Like, how we've been in the past couple of weeks defensively is, like, completely different than the start of the season, and we just bring, like, a new kind of intensity to defense that we hadn't before, and it's really great.
And that's actually a good point, because I was talking to Coach Winkler before your game against Colby, and I saw the game against Colby. And while it was a 35-0 game, it was basically your defense did step up, and it was almost like you played very tough. There's a couple of plays at the end of the first half that kind of turned that game around where it was a tight game. In fact, you had the football around with 2 minutes to go and kind of moving it, and then, of course, a couple of late scores. But it did look like the mentality had changed. And I was talking before that game and even after the game that especially for your team to be able to do what you want to do defensively, you have to be better. That you've proven you can move the football pretty well during the course of the season, but in order to, say, like this week against Auburndale, the defense is a major key, and it looks as though mentally you have turned a bit of a corner, haven't you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, going into this week, we can't let Auburndale score 44, however much they had against us. That's way too many points. And, I mean, against Kobe, we competed with them for 3 quarters. I feel like that second quarter was really where they did most of their scoring, and it was just amazing to see. Like, we felt it, like, on defense, it seemed like we were a completely different team. And then, like, against Pittsville, we brought that same intensity and played really well defensively. And, like, just turning that corner and, like, becoming better defensively really just brings us to another level as a team.
And when you're playing a familiar conference foe in the first round of the playoffs like this, there aren't a lot of secrets, right? You guys know what they're going to bring. They know what you're going to bring. And having your defense, and probably when you talked about leadership, having improved in those areas, kind of the X factors, right? That's what's going to make a difference in those games. And so have you guys kind of talked a lot about that in practice this week, about how you are a different team now than when you played them first time around?
Yeah, we've definitely been talking about that. Yeah.
By the way, people, it's great to see the guys look at each other. Who's going to talk first here?
Yeah. Yeah, this week, we look back at, like, the film of that game, and we just saw so many different ways we can improve, and that just makes you feel really good knowing that there's so many things you can improve on, and, like, just knowing that you can play them so much tougher than you did the first time. And we're just really excited to play this Friday.
Again, we're talking to Cooper Huxtable and Tyler Underwood here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. We're going to get back to the football aspect, but you guys are so active in terms of all season for Marathon High School, and seeing you on the football field, on the basketball court, on the baseball diamond. And I wanted to ask, and I ask this a lot to multi-sport athletes, if you're able to carry momentum from a good season in one sport to another sport, because obviously it's almost like handing the baton off. You go from one sport to another, and there's not a lot of time usually between the sports nowadays. First Cooper and then Tyler, I guess, are you able, if you have either a good football season, take it to basketball, or a good basketball season into baseball, are you able to take momentum from one sport to another?
I think that football and the basketball, I mean, there's really no break at all there. So, like, last year especially, like, we kind of had a disappointing season. Like, from my perspective, I think we could have done a lot better. And, like, going into, like, no break at all and then going right to basketball, like, I felt like we were almost starting fresh, so there was almost no momentum there. But, like, this year, I feel like we're going to have some momentum just because of how we have done, like, so much better, and, like, we still have a lot, like, out there that we can go for. So I feel like that'll help us this basketball season as well.
Tyler, what about you?
I think a great example of this is Newman last year. They won state championship in football, and I feel like they carried that momentum over into basketball and then won it there. I mean, that's just a perfect example of, like, how one good season can really impact another one. I mean, we all knew they're going to be good, but I mean, I'm sure it helped them, like, just have another level of confidence. Like, if you have a good season, you'll have more confidence going into the next.
I know Jason's a football guy, but I got to ask you about the basketball aspect because, you know, you've had great success. You've got, I think, probably high expectations again coming into this season. You got the big guy coming back again as well. When you look ahead, and I guess, you know, to put a little damper, it was a tough way to end it last season, obviously, in that game against Auburndale. It seems like you guys play Auburndale in the hardwood almost every year. Now you get them on the football field as well in a playoff. But going into the season, obviously high expectations, but some maybe a little chip on the shoulder after the way things ended last year. Cooper, what do you think? I'm going to start
yeah.
asking you specifically. You guys keep looking at each other like, who's going to talk next? No, that's my fault. I'm going to start asking, hey, one of you guys. But Cooper, what do you think?
I would say, that it motivates you more when you know you lost to them in like the previous year, and even if it's in a different sport. Like, they eliminated you, you kind of want to do the same. But I mean, it's not just gonna happen. You still got to work for that. So
I know that, and again, Tyler, I know that you got a lot of work to do here on the gridiron, but when you look ahead to the basketball season, what are the expectations for Marathon? Because it does look like from the outside that you guys are going to be a team to watch.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have big expectations, but I mean, we can't really say anything without like backing it up. So you can't really say anything till the season starts, like we'll be able to define who we are as a team once we get going, and we can't let like all the high hopes from everyone get to our heads. Like, we got to make sure we're working hard no matter what, as if like we're put on the same level as like every other team. Like, the most important part is just bringing a good work ethic, because like there are a lot of teams who are like ranked highly who like let it get to their heads and then they'll like end up losing.
We talked about this a couple weeks ago when we had like Mosinee Medford rivalry in the GNC. You guys kind of have that with the tradition and of the strong athletics and so many teams and programs in your conference. I mean, you guys, Edgar, Colby, Auburndale, up and down with some of the other ones. What is your relationship? Like, we talked about Auburndale ending your basketball season this year, being right back at it for football this year. What is your relationship like? Like, do you guys know these guys from these other schools? And obviously you talk about summer leagues and camps and things like that. So basically from the time you were biting ankles to now, like, they'd have to be pretty familiar foes as well. What are some of those relationships like with the athletes? Is it pretty adversarial, or is it really competitive at game time but friendly off the court? What is it like?
Yeah, pretty much exactly like the second thing you said. We go out there, it's game time, we're kind of enemies. We have to go against each other, bring that intensity. But, I mean, off the court, like, I feel like I can talk to pretty much any of those guys. And, like, yeah.
And same for you, Cooper?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, even during the game, sometimes you talk to them, but, like, during a timeout or, like, dead ball. So you know them from playing them all the time. So,
well, who's your favorite rivals to play? The ones that you get juiced up most for? Whatever sport it may be, basketball, baseball, football. Is there a game where you just feel it right away when you see it on the schedule that, hey, this is going to be a huge one? And there's not a wrong answer, guys, as they discuss each between themselves. So who are the favorite rivals?
My favorite people to play last year in basketball was Newman. I mean, both of those games were just amazing games. Two great teams going at it, close games. Like the second one, playing for a conference championship, packed gym. It's like 300 degrees in there. Like, it was just crazy to just be a part of that. Like, not everyone gets the privilege to be a part of something like that, and I just feel honored that I got to play in a game like that.
Absolutely.
Cooper, who's your favorite?
I would say in basketball, year after year, it's Stratford. I feel like that's always a good game, no matter how either team looks. That's always, like, we both know each other so well, playing in playoffs or playing 3 times each year in the last 2 years. We both knew each other so well. So, I mean,
I know you. Seems like every year you're playing it's either Stratford or Auburn in the playoffs, and sometimes both of them. I mean, that's the way it's been for Marathon basketball recently. Before we get back to the football here, I got to ask you each, in terms of academics, do you have a favorite class when you're going to school, getting ready to go to practice or a game afterwards? Is there a favorite class that you have right now at Marathon? Cooper, you're thinking?
Does it have to be a class, or can it just be
What?
I don't have many classes this year.
Really?
That's why I'm saying that.
Okay, well, you answer it the way you want to, because I mean that's a good thing about an interview subject. You can always take it wherever you want to go with it. What when you're away from the sports, what are you liking to do?
Honestly, my first hour class of college English, that's not that bad. I feel like it's actually pretty good.
And Tyler, anything that when you're away from the sports that you like to do?
Well, for me, I have a different professor than Cooper. I hope he's not listening right now, but it is not the greatest. But we do also have psychology some days in the morning. I really like that class. And then also at the end of the day, I teacher aide for fourth graders, and that's always just like the highlight of my day. It's so much fun.
Very nice.
That's a great answer. So kind of piggybacking off what Chad said, like we talked about it before we got on, like what is the summer like for you guys? We talked about just when you're that competitive in 3 different sports. I can't even imagine what the summers. We talked about that. When you have a chance to step away from your sports a little bit, what do you guys like to do in your free time? Cooper, you can go first.
A lot of the time, there is not a lot of free time. Like when there is, like it's small chunks. So most of the time, yeah, I'll sleep or just like lay on the couch, like scrolling through TikTok because it's pretty addicting. So,
Yeah.
Tyler?
I feel like most of my free time that I have in the summer, I'm usually spending with my friends because, I mean, like you only have like 4 summers of high school, and, you know, there are a lot of memories to be made in high school summers, so I like to spend time with my friends. But I also will get a nice nap in sometimes. Sometimes you get pretty exhausted with everything that's going on, so you got to just take a little power nap.
With all the sports you're involved in, each of you obviously getting near the end of your high school careers, do you hope to continue to be involved in athletics after high school? I should have asked again. Tyler, who'll go first?
I'm not exactly sure yet. I mean, I'll still have to wait and see how things pan out. I mean, I feel like I'd be willing to keep doing sports in college, but I mean, there's just so many things that can happen. Like, it's so hard to know right now, like, what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think I'd probably be open to it as well, but, like, it's a really big dedication in college, even more so than high school, just because, like, you're basically starting over again almost. Like, you don't have any flow. You've never been there before. But, like, for sure I'd probably want to do intramurals with stuff. So
I think it's great that you're both open to it and kind of giving it thought, but I also like even more the fact that you recognize how meaningful and important these 4 years are, and even if you do go on to play, it's hard to match the experiences that you guys are laying down right now. So good for you.
Well, let's talk about Friday. Obviously a huge one, level 1 playoff at Auburndale. What does your team have to do in order to keep your season going? Make sure you're playing in level 2 in a week's time. Obviously, you know, they've earned their number 1 seed. I mean, it's obviously a very good football team. You played a high-scoring affair just a few weeks ago. Both teams with over 400 yards of offense. I guess Tyler and then Cooper, what do you guys each look as the keys for success for Marathon on Friday?
I think a big key is what we've been talking about before, defense. Like, we were able to move the ball, as you said. You know, we had 400 yards of offense. And, I mean, they're probably going to bring a different kind of defensive game plan to try to stop that. But, I mean, if you play good defense, if they don't score, they can't win the game. So, I mean, if we can do that, that's about as simple as it gets. But, I mean, it's obviously going to be really tough because they're a really good team, and we're really going to have to bring it on Friday.
What does the quarterback say?
I think offensively, we're going to have to take care of the ball. We've had issues in some games of, like, holding onto it and fumbling, or, like, I've thrown a few interceptions where I don't necessarily need to be throwing the ball. So I think being smarter with the ball and taking care of it, and then also defensively, we need to try to get those turnovers for ourselves and, like, getting us the momentum and kind of, like, almost getting the upper hand by time of possession. You know, the longer you have it, the less they're going to score. So,
yeah, I think I think when you talk about the rivalry that you've played them before, but when you look at the seeding in the matchup, you guys kind of have, in my opinion, the advantage because all the pressure's on them, right? As the one seed, and you guys obviously are not going in there relaxed or taking anything for granted, but you do have the opportunity to play spoiler. Do you give that any thought?
Yeah, I mean, we can just go out there and let it rip. I mean, we don't have anything to lose. As I said before, people didn't even expect us to get this far. So, I mean, why not take it a little farther? I feel like we have the ability to compete for sure, and we need to bring it. And I'm really looking forward to Friday. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And finally, final question for each of you. You've obviously both had a lot of experience in terms of high school sports over your high school career. We always ask for if you can give a piece of advice for somebody just starting their journey in high school athletics, a freshman or a sophomore that's just getting underway. What piece of advice that you've learned over the years would you give to a young teammate? Cooper, we'll start with you.
I mean, obviously, every senior's probably said it, but don't take it for granted. It goes really fast. Like, beginning of this year, in the first month of school, I had a hard time believing that I was a senior already. So it doesn't slow down. It only keeps going faster and faster. You can't ever get it back. So just do what you can when you can, and don't take that for granted.
And Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't think it's even sank in yet that I'm a senior, I'm almost done. It feels like just last summer we were playing in the state tournament in baseball, and that was my freshman year. So the main piece of advice I'd give to someone younger is put in work when you're younger, because that will make you who you are when you're older. I mean, you might not be getting a ton of playing time when you're younger, but I mean, if you want to be really, really good when you're older, you have to put in that work. And then also, when you do start playing, you have to keep that same mindset. You have to see your potential to grow, and you have to really, really want it.
Terrific. Cooper Huxama, Tyler Underwood, best of luck coming up on Friday night at Auburndale. Best of luck as you get to the winter and spring sports as well. Thanks for coming on over.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, great
Yes,
job
thank
tonight,
you.
guys. Good luck on Friday.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick time out and then come back and look at the brackets. We'll talk about these playoff matchups coming up on Friday night. This is the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Thanks again to all of our guests tonight. In the first hour, Paul Micklick, the Newman Catholic High School head football coach, and then our Marathon High School football guest, quarterback Cooper Huxama, receiver Tyler Underwood for joining us. And again, great to be able to talk to all these really impressive people, both in terms of the coaches and the student athletes, and great to have both these young men join us here tonight.
Yeah, it was kind of neat tonight. Obviously, having Coach Micklig here is awesome. I mean, I think we forget a little bit when we can talk about the Sinses and the Coach Takis and Stefan Hagen and on, Rosemeyer's, all the great coaches in the area. And Paul's in that conversation. I mean, they've had a lot of success, and he's done a lot of really good things, and they now have that tradition and the gold balls and the records and the elite players. And so, yeah, it was great having him on.
And he built it from the ground up.
Yeah.
He lost some 20-some games in a row to start off. I mean, it was not easy. He had to build from the bottom up and be able to work his first team. And even when they were an 11-player, I mean, he built them up. He got them into the playoffs a number of times in the Merrillwood Conference against Edgars and the Straffords, and then the Cloverwood against some really good competition as well. So, again, well-deserved success for Coach Micklig and for Newman Catholic and for these young men. As I said, they're busy. Football, basketball, baseball, and very successful and big cogs in each of those sports, both Cooper Huxama and Tyler Underwood. So I'm sure they're just getting underway with what should be a very impressive senior campaign.
Yeah, and I think it's by far my favorite part of the show is the young men and women that we've had on throughout the course of the year, and how each one's a little bit different and where they are and they're within their team and their school and their life and their future plans. It was kind of neat to see these two kind of feed off each other a little bit, and kind of the body language they were giving each other and facial expressions about how to answer questions. It was neat. They did a great job, and two more to add to the list of a great season of student athletes that we've had on.
Well, let's talk about what's going to be a very big Friday night. It's always exciting, that first Friday evening of the high school football playoffs. Teams trying to take that first step towards the ultimate goal of playing at Camp Randall Stadium. We'll start off with Division I, and again, the action last week had some significance in terms of where these teams ended up. You got, let's talk about the matchups. You got the number 1 seed is Hudson. They're taking on number 8 Chippewa Falls, a pair of Big Rivers Conference teams. The number 2 seed is Kimberly. They're taking on number 7 Appleton North. They played last week, in fact, 14-0 Kimberly in the Fox Valley Association. You got the number 3 seed, the Wisconsin, the Valley Football Association champion Stevens Point Panthers. Another rematch against number 6 seeded Wausau West. And then the one game between teams that are not in the same conference is the 5-4 game, DC Everest traveling to Neenah. And I guess the first thing we're going to talk about before talking about these matchups is the fact that Hudson is number 1, Kimberly is number 2, and Stevens Point is number 3. And yeah. I know that a lot of folks, especially in this part of the state, wonder how a team like Stevens Point that goes 8-1, goes undefeated in the conference, wins the league championship, beats Hudson in week number 2, is seeded number 3.
Yeah, their one loss is against McGuanago. It's not like like they lost. I mean, it's crazy to me. We've talked about this a lot. I don't dislike the computer system. I think it takes some of the other energy out of it that maybe needed to go, but it is a little bit of a head scratcher. It would be really nice for these 3 of these 4 matchups to not be conference rematches. I left Steam Stadium last week thinking for sure East or West and Everest were going to be the 5 and 4, and the Warriors were going to be heading back to Steam, which if it is what it is, we lost the game, but I don't love these conference matches and the way the schools like bumping Bayport out this year and bringing Kimberly in. Yeah. Like that would have been another way to avoid one of these conference matchups. And then I will never completely understand. I mean, if Spash probably is okay with their matchup, and you got to win the games no matter what, right? That's what they say. So the matchups are irrelevant. If you want to get your gold ball or advance, you got to win the games. But I think Spash has a heck of an argument that at the end of the day, they are a conference champion by the WIA rules. Kimberly is not. So how Kimberly's ahead of them. And then to me, first and foremost, it should always be head-to-head kind of plays that the final, all things being equal, records, blah, blah, blah. that head-to-head should play a bigger role, and in another example of a case where it most certainly did not.
And again, it would be, frankly, just more interesting if it was Chippewa Falls and Stevens Point and Wausau West and Hudson. I mean, much more interesting.
Yeah, I think everybody at this point is ready to play somebody
Right.
different and not do a repeat of somebody you've already played in conference.
That said, the matchups are what the matchups are. Let's start with the game I'll be at on Friday night, right here on Bow Falls Radio, live at 6:35 for the pregame, 7 o'clock for the opening kickoff. Wausau West at Stevens Point. 27-7, Stevens Point won over the Warriors a few weeks back at Tom Field, a night where the Warriors coughed it up either 7 or 8 times, however you officially count turnovers. It was only a one-score game going into the fourth quarter before Stevens Point pulled away. Obviously, Spash has all the momentum, winning 8 games in a row to get to this point. Warriors come off a loss at DC Everest. What do you see?
I think a big X factor in this one, too, is the fact that this one's at Spash. I think the first one was at West and had a great crowd, and that was a big one, and didn't take advantage of that. So that advantage now shifts to Spash, which can be a big deal. Obviously, Spash is favored, as they should be. And the one thing that West can build off of is, one, depending on what happens with Ray, obviously it'd be great to get him back. I'm not exactly sure where that sits right now, but they played that game without him as well. He got hurt on his second carry, injured on his second carry of the game. So they've already played Spash without him. As bad as those turnovers were, 7-0 at half, 14-7 going into the fourth quarter. So they still had the opportunity, and now they've had weeks to kind of plan for playing without Ray if they need to. And that should definitely give them the opportunity. Take care of the football, be better on special teams, and make a game of this. Spash, do what you did last game, do it a little bit better, and you feel good about their chances.
I think Wausau West defensively has a good matchup. Stevens Point is going to have to move the football. Can they keep in check Braylon Smola? Obviously, Grant Chardonnay is a very high percentage passer as well. But despite all the turnovers, the Warrior defense did a pretty good job against Stevens Point until the fourth quarter when they appeared to wear down. I think Stevens Point's going to need a big play or two that they didn't really get the first time around. I think the Warriors are going to need a big play or two on the offensive side as well. And again, I think it's a very even matchup, to be honest with you. I think, again, that first game was such a poor night for Wausau West. This one has the makings of one that could go right down to the wire.
Yeah, and hopefully they got a wake-up call last week against the Evergreens in a game that they could have won and didn't. So they now know the difference between being ready and having that energy and not. So hopefully they'll bring it this week.
DC Everest coming off that win against West, 7-2. A good year for DC Everest. A good bounce back after I thought a lot of question marks the way last season ended. And they do travel to Neenah. DC Everest 5, Neenah 4. Obviously, we know Everest a lot better around here than Neenah. Evergreen still have, again, some holes in the backfield with their running backs. With McDonald, I think they got a good receiver. I think with George, they got a good quarterback. And we saw a pretty good defense as well for DCE.
Yeah, I think the Warriors had this matchup a couple of years ago where we were the 4 and they were the 5. And Neenah,
I can't believe you're bringing it up.
Yeah, I'm finally starting to get over it. But I think the one thing we know about Neenah from a matchup standpoint is their strength of schedule is stronger than anybody in the VFA, and obviously that they're probably a little bit more battle tested, and the Evergreens are going to have to probably find a little more offense than they've shown the last few weeks, and Neenah probably likes this matchup. Neenah looks at and thinks that they probably are, like I said, a little more battle tested and probably match up a little better offensively and defensively. But I think Everest showed last year when they went over and played a Hudson team and gave them all that they could handle and had a chance to win late. I don't think this game is going to be a blowout. I think Neenah has proven this year to be beatable, and Everest has a good coaching staff and a good defense, which makes a big difference, and it should be a good matchup.
Let's talk about the Valley Football Association teams in Division II. Marshfield is a number 7 seed. Again, it's been a real struggle this year, to be honest with you. I mean, they had a winning record in conference, but boy, their losses were ugly losses. It's one of those cases where sometimes you think back to what we saw this season, you don't realize they're 4-3 in the conference because it felt like it was kind of worse. And they play New Richmond, as you said. It's a rematch from an early season game, and those rematches can be so different the second time around. And Marshfield obviously defensively played very well against Hortonville last week, but boy, their offense is going to have to find a little bit more, aren't they?
Yeah, I think I was talking to their athletic director today, and they feel good about the matchup because they did They didn't win, but they did compete early. And I think the biggest thing Marshfield has going for them, it doesn't matter how you won. They had a great win last week against Hortonville. I don't think very many people picked that one, so they ride that big wave of momentum. And New Richmond isn't a world beater this year. I mean, they did play Hudson last week for a chance of share of the conference championship, and obviously lost that one. But I think Marshfield goes in and broken record. But Marshfield has some tradition, and they know how to win football games in the playoffs. They're not that far removed from a level 4 game.
Mm-hmm. It's always interesting when a team that like Marshfield goes to D2, because you see most of these VFA teams in Division 1. The winner of that one will take on either Menominee or River Falls next week. Also, Hortonville from the VFA. And again, a couple of weeks ago, when we went over to there, the thought was they were going to be one of the top seeds in their Division 2 bracket, but a loss against Wausau West, a loss against Marshfield, 13 combined points. Didn't give up a lot of points, but they still were not able to score enough, and now they have to travel to Cedarburg. I mean, this Hortonville team has the tools to make a run, even at a number 6 seed, don't they?
I definitely think they do. They're going to have to find a way to score. And obviously, I think they probably had a decent game plan last week for doing that, and then stumbled over themselves with 7 turnovers. So I think that their strength lies in throwing the football offensively if they have one, and they're going to have to complete a lot of passes to win this one.
Winner will take on either number 2 Homestead or number 7 Pulaski in the next round. We have to take one more break, then we'll come back and look at the rest of the action coming up on Friday night. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. We have to kind of roll pretty quickly through a lot of these.
It's not that. How long has Sparta been D3? I feel like it's not that long ago that they were. I think they used to play some Valley schools in the first rounds of the playoffs. Them and Toma quite a bit different. So maybe I'm thinking Toma.
I mean, Sparta. I mean, wasn't it Sparta where West went that one year many years ago? Was it because they have the rivalry, Sparta, and then there's somebody
Toma
else.
It's right next door.
Yeah, I think we went to Sparta one year because I remember that was a really small booth, and it was right by a river.
I think I went my senior year in high school was we were 6-3. That was when you had to be a conference champion to make the playoffs. And then my sophomore year, I was at UW La Crosse, and West made the playoffs that Kurt Richards senior year, and they came over and played Toma, and were up like 21-0 in the second half, and ended up losing.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeesh.
But that was at Toma, so we drove over from La Crosse and watched the game.
Now that's not a good way to end a season.
No, and that was that ended up. Yeah, that was Coach Dressler's last year.
Oh, really?
Then, he left and went back towards Fond du Lac.
Yeesh.
Interesting to see these, because as we're having these conference realignment talks right now, look. The third distant option, but an option, is the La Crosse Holman Onalaska contingent.
Mississippi Valley, or that was it's called, I think.
Yeah, we feel like they're going to get bounced on their ear pretty quick here too, because those small schools are sick of.
Where are the discussions on the Merrill leaving and what happens after that?
That's where they're hot and heavy, because November 1st is the deadline. So we're going to Hortonville next Wednesday as athletic directors to meet with the ADs from the Fox Valley and a couple from the FRCC. And then we've also been in some conversations with the Big Rivers to kind of check their temperature and see where they're at. But
it's not a fun conversation, is it?
No.
Because nobody wants crap. Remember when we first went to the VFA North or East or whatever there was, North and South. Boy, they really hate. The Wisconsin Valley Conference was ruining a perfect conference.
Well, and no matter where we go at this point, we are 5 adding on with a certainty better. And the Fox Valley used to just hand it to us, like anything there was anything there was a vote on was pretty.
They all were a block.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Almost time. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes, going down some of the area teams' postseason debuts in the Level 1 playoffs coming up on Friday night. We talked about the VFA teams in D1 and D2. We got Division 3, and when you look at D3, you got some of these Great Northern Conference squads, and we got in one part of the bracket, number 5 Lakeland going to number 4 Sparta. The winner of that game will take on either 8th-seeded La Crosse Logan or number 1 Rice Lake. Number 6 is Rhinelander. I think the Hodags have a real tough one. They have to go to Onalaska, the number 3 seed coming up on Friday. And then a couple of GNC teams will meet, number 7 Hayward and number 2 Medford. So that part of the bracket, I think Lakeland has to feel pretty good about being in that 5-4 game as opposed to like where they were a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. The other interesting thing from these 4 matchups is Rice Lake's exactly where they like to be every year after surviving another Big Rivers run and being 1 seed in D3. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Medford beat Onalaska?
They
so
did.
that's an intriguing potential level 2 matchup. And
And that's why they're number 2. And, well, then again, we
who
don't
knows?
know.
Who knows why it is. But, yeah, I think Onalaska's down a little bit. So this could end up being a decent run for Medford.
How about that? GNC team making a decent run. Anna go from the GNC. They got a number 6 seed, and it makes you wonder about the strength. Again, nothing against Anago, but they got their hat handed to them a few times this year. Found the wins they needed to get, and they traveled to number 3 Fox Valley Lutheran. Winner of that one will take on number 7 Ashwaubenon or number 2 Notre Dame Academy. Division 4. We usually don't talk about Division 4 on this program because as long as I've been doing it, there was never an area team in Division 4. But now Mosinee, who normally was in Division 3, they're actually in D4. And it's going to be interesting to see what it means because I'm not really sure at this point. Mosinee, a number 2 seed in the bracket. They will take on number 7 Bloomer. The winner will take on either number 3 Oconto Falls and number 6 Somerset. The number 1 seed in this bracket is St. Croix Central ahead of Mosinee. But Mosinee and Bloomer, again, it's really interesting to see for the first time Mosinee down to Division 4.
Yeah, I think that it'll be nice for them to see some different trees, as I like to say
Right.
it, as the Bloomer. The other interesting one in this one is the 5 seed Ellsworth. Is that not who knocked off Edgar?
That is
week
right.
1? So that's an intriguing matchup as well. And obviously they saw some bumps in the road along the way to end up a 5 seed.
Division 5, Colby, despite their loss last week, despite having 2 losses, apparently in the right bracket because they still got a number 1 seed. They were not a conference champion. They lost a couple of games coming down the stretch in the Merriwood, but they're still number 1. They take on 8th-seeded Durand, Arkansas. Number 4 seed is Neilsville Granton from the Clover Belt. They take on number 5 St. Croix Falls. Stanley Boyd, a team that we talked about early in the season from the Clover Belt. They really good speed, a really good team. They rolled past Marathon and had a solid season. They take on number 6 seeded Gale Ettrick Trempolo. And also in that bracket, Elkmount against Northwestern. But I guess the big team to keep an eye on from the Merriwood is Colby getting a number 1 seed. And again, you see teams that are 8-1 be number 3 seeds, and then you got a 7-2 team being a number 1 seed. It all comes down to kind of where you land.
Yeah, I think, and traditionally, Northwestern has a nice program and has that, so that could be a nice matchup down the road.
And I think Stanley Boyd's going to be one to keep an eye on. I think talent-wise and physically, there could be a handful.
They got some nice recruits on that team.
There you go. We got also in Division 5, Whitburn, a number 1 seed. They will host the Truckers of Clintonville. A win would set up an interesting level 2 matchup potentially as Amherst, number 4 seed against New Holstein. Tomahawk is in the playoffs, a number 7 seed against Southern Door, the number 2 seed, and also in that bracket, Sturgeon Bay and Wrightstown. But boy, you can't help but get a little excited thinking about a potential Whitburn-Amherst game in level 2. If we went down to the final play of the game at the 1-yard line during the regular season.
Yeah, I would bet that Amherst is licking their chops for another bite at that apple.
Division 6, Abbotsford. Again, the running duo and trio sometimes of the Abbey Falcons. Number 2 seed take on number 7 Cadott. With a win, they would take on either number 6 Crandon or number 3 Cameron. Also, in another Division 6 bracket, you got Auburndale, the number 1 seed, taking on Marathon, the number 8 seed. We talked about that game with our student athlete guest. And then Coleman. And Coleman has been a really good program, and they've usually not a number 5 seed. They've been a real good program in recent years, but they're number 5. They take on Luther. But you got Abbotsford as the number 2 seed. Really good seed for the 6-3 Falcons.
Yeah, and we know how well they run the ball, so it will be interesting to see if they can make a little push in that side. I mean, the fact that they're a 2 seed tells you that they're one of the better teams, so it'll be interesting to watch.
And also this Marathon Auburndale game, I mean, for an 8-1, it's usually, most you're going to see some really big blowouts on Friday. I don't think that's going to be one of them. I think the way Marathon moved the ball against Auburndale the first time, and I really did agree with Tyler Underwood when he talked about the defense picking it up late in the season. That game against Colby, I saw them. They made it tough on Colby in that football game, and I think it is a better defense than the one Auburndale saw early in the season.
Yeah, and my bet is Auburndale's not in love with the matchup either, like that conference
the
rivalry
old conference,
and a team
yeah,
that they know has gotten better as the year went on.
Also going to... as well, I forgot, I'm missing a little bit. Stratford, I got to turn the page once in a while. Stratford is part of the Auburndale part of the bracket. Stratford, number 2 seed. And again, you'll wonder about that one. And I think the team that would probably say, boy, Stratford should be at the number 1 seed is Wyowega Fremont, because they're number 7 seed. And they just saw Stratford 2 weeks ago, and it's like 60-something to nothing. Bondwell against Mondovi also. But Stratford, number 2, Auburndale, number 1.
Yeah, that's another computer head scratcher.
And Stratford and Wyowega. I mean, I tell you, Wyowega 6-0 start and then just had not able to slow any of the big 3 down the stretch. And now I can only imagine when they were watching the Tube on Saturday morning and saw Stratford in the first round. It's like, oh man, anybody but Stratford.
that theme we've talked about all year, what a impact the how your schedule lines up. You win those games early or lose those games early, what a difference it makes down the road.
Edgar is a number 2 seed in their bracket. They take on number 7 Glenwood City, and potentially a real interesting level 2 game because Regis is number 3 in that bracket. They take on Elmwood Plum City, and of course last year Edgar's season came to an end against Regis, but Edgar's been playing really good football.
Yeah, I would say that would be a great game to watch and probably something to look. Maybe go and see what's happening in Edgar next Friday.
And again, in D7, a couple of CWC small schools. Loyal, again, a team that's played really well coming down the stretch. In fact, they really have played their best football by far lately. They have to travel to number 1 Reedsville. And winner of that game takes on either number 5 Iola Scandinavia or number 4 Cambria Friesland. And again, I think IS is a team that has the potential of going on the road and winning. And obviously, Coach Erickson has been around the block a few times, and a team that's playing really good football.
Yep, probably a matchup that they didn't mind when the brackets came out, and gives them a good opportunity to make it to level 2.
And 8-player Newman Catholic and Gilman. I tell you, third straight year these schools have played in the postseason. Newman won the first 2, including a 29-28 thriller 2 years ago en route to the state championship. Gilman undefeated. Newman winners of 3 games in a row. Obviously not the same team, but at the same time we heard from the coach just getting better and better, and they're going to be prepared. They're going to be well coached, and they're going to give themselves an opportunity.
Great coaching, lots of tradition, and kind of like we talked about in those early season matchups, those tough losses for Newman early, these teams are probably looking forward to playing and probably maybe looking past them a little bit. We'll see.
And the winner of that game faces either Owen Withy or Thorpe. And again, you talk about rematches from conference, but when it's the week before and when it was a tight game at the same site, it was Owen Withy had the lead by a couple of scores. Thorpe's rallied in the fourth quarter to win 24-22. These are 2 good teams. I think this is going to be a really good football game. I was watching some tape with Coach Micklig and his coaches Sunday, and they were watching the Gilman-Thorpe game, and this Thorpe team has some really good athletes.
Yeah, a nice, like you said, tough one. Owen Withy doesn't need to change their game plan. They were ahead 2 scores in the fourth quarter, so what they did worked. They probably just got to clean up a couple of mistakes.
Got to finish, right?
Yep.
You got to finish, and that's one of the things that's different this week, generally, as we have about a minute 20 to go. It is playoffs. The mentality, these are still young people, young student athletes. They're going to be put in situations that may be similar to what they saw in the regular season, but they're still different because that the season could end on Friday night. And it will end for half the teams on Friday night.
Definitely. And tradition plays a huge role. Like how much your program has been in the playoffs, how deep of a run you've made, and probably one of the biggest things for these teams who are somewhat new or inconsistent playoff teams is keeping your kids motivated and dialed in. Because what happens right now, that gets dark quicker, the weather turns a little bit, so it's a little less enjoyable out there. And unfortunately, the basketball open gyms start and the open mats, and there's some outside pressures pulling at you a little bit. So that's a huge factor in this. Is when you take the field on Friday night, is everybody on the same page, dialed in, and wanting to move forward together?
It's going to be fun and interesting on Friday night. It'll be interesting to see whose seasons end and whose seasons continue for at least one more week.
Yeah.
Should be fun. We'll talk all about it next week. Enjoy the game. I think you'll be down where I am on Friday night in Stevens Point, and we'll look forward to that. So that's Jason Foster.